Excellent. I don't know what I'm looking for yet. Oh, do you have Zoom running?
I do. I'm just recording, essentially.
Okay, perfect. I don't know what it is that I am looking for. It's like asking what I want to see on an adventure. It's not particularly...
Well, keep that adventure in mind and hop on Zoom with me.
Sure.
We can DJ Discord, and I guess that sends twice if I have... Oh, that's funny. If I have your message window open on Discord right through your user, but I have your actual text background open, I could just keep sending the same message over and over and over to you. Here, watch this. Oh, how was I able to do that?
What did you do?
I don't know. I was able to spam out that Zoom to you. Interesting. Either way, I'll look into that later. It's sort of irrelevant and tangenty, and our wonderful brains in action right now. So that's...
Echo.
Yeah. All right, so I've muted myself on Discord, and some music is nice. So, so that adventure for you looks like what? What are you looking for from an adventure in all adventures?
See what's around the next corner.
Interesting.
To be able to look back at some point and say, look, we did the thing.
Hey, Zuli, do the thing!
Yeah. I don't actually know what that's from.
That's from Avatar.
Oh, yeah.
Where the mad scientists are always going around and... See, because I heard Simon Sinek say the other day that the first person that he really felt like he had a mentor for in his life, once he actually told him, the guy turned around and said, yeah, I'm glad I have you as a mentor in my life. And this is a man who was very powerful, 25 years his senior. And so I've always felt that way about you as a mentor, right? When it comes to it. And you sharing the same thing with me is what I consider to be, that's when you can untackle unknown corners.
Right, exactly.
Right, because you're taking each other to the edge of the precipice, which is the corner, right?
Right. Information boundary, the alpha. But, puppy. It would be not good to, like, imagine you've got a group of friends and they're all hate each other and the car's breaking down and, like, you've already done the emergency fix where the axle's held in with a block of wood kind of thing. That's not the time to go find out what's around the next corner. That's the time to you're going home then, right? You're going back to safety to get fixed so that you can go out again, find new friends and find a new axle. And so I'm really glad whenever I work with you, I feel like I got the right equipment, the right tools, the right friends. It's just it's excellent.
Yeah, we could keep building upon that. Anyone can be a giant, right? Right? And we don't have to stand on the past, right? We can stand on each other, right, at certain times. And to be honest, there's got to be one person at the bottom of the wall letting the other person stand on their shoulders, right? But then the other person turns around and pulls them up.
Right.
Every single time, right? And in certain ways, I got to have you pull me up, and in certain ways, you pull me up. So just for the cycles that we've gone through where you'll be up and then I'll be down, or I'll be down while you're up, and it's this wonderful sine and cosine kind of relationship.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. This sort of, actually, I've never done it, but this sort of feels like an eye to me. It sort of looks like...
Yeah, it does.
Hi, Ben.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a little freaky, right?
It's a shape.
Right? But that's actually really interesting because, that's really the inner symbol of the, infinity and that kind of stuff. You know,
Yeah, right.
when you start like cross converging those two, that's really what you're gonna probably end up with. A little bit of jutting out there, and you know that's really interesting. You can almost start like turning those two on each other, and you know you end up with like an infinite sphere of these like little jagged edges, right, that go out at the end of the eye, right? You know, when it comes down to it, various extensions of people's adventure, right? So how about that? So let's say we have this, right?
Yeah.
Right? And for me, this is my core, right? What you just talked about, right? This circle here, this is my core. Now, this is my safe zone, right? This is where I have unconditional love, a bottle of joy, right? All those kinds of things. And I'm not talking alcohol. Everybody, if you're listening,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you share this in the future, get your minds out of the gutter, right? I'm talking about a bottle of joy, those moments of belief and support and inalienable rights that anybody has. Like that, when you give that to somebody unconditionally, it's amazing what can happen in their life then, right? So we both gave that to each other, and to be honest, we're here to really appreciate with others the success that anyone can have in their life. And the first thing that I think we can do about that is share it. So on this sharing journey for, you know, for yourself, what are you, well, why would you help me write a book today that we're going to record and will eventually probably be available as a recording, but more of a conversational style?
Because because it's because it's the next thing. It's what's around the next corner. Like we've come around the corner, and the next section is a book. Right? And like we've been through, last time we came around a corner, it was that we had to, you know, we need to do sales, and like there have been all these corners where we had you know, sales and development and all that stuff, and now the corner is a book. And there's, you know, there's not, I don't know if there's like, I'm playing with the analogy of the exploring a trail on a mountain or something like that. You don't really have the option of going around things. That's part of the awesome thing about it, is whatever you come to, that's what you got to work on.
Yes, absolutely. So we've gotten a lot quicker at it, haven't we? As far as like taking in information. I actually have a quote here. When I started studying ontology, it was, you know, we can extract, or more appropriately transfer, knowledge from each other's brains to each other, right?
Right.
And what needs to really wrap that, I feel, is what we've just talked about, in the sense of, well, how do you exchange information with others and really come out the other end with bettering them and yourself in the process? I'm not exclusively talking about people who like help others as a healing path or other things like that. I'm just referring to a beneficial convergence of two people. How does that feel?
That makes sense.
So there it is right there.
Yeah. Did you take that note before or after we talked about the quantum collapse and quantum?
You see how great these are?
Yeah.
All right, this is a long time ago. This book's front cover is long gone.
So this book was given to me by Jake. We were talking about him earlier. The very first page was May 2013, and is the design, is the cut lengths and design for the workbench that I built the first day that I worked for him, that I used for the next hour, you know, like a year and a half. After I went back to college, because I worked on him for helping him with the summer. After I went back to college, he ended up moving his workbench to that workbench. He now works at this workbench.
So he gave you a new book with the writing already in there at the time?
No, he handed me this book and he says, "This is your notebook." And so I started taking my notes for all the work that I did for him. And at the end I was like, "Hey," and like at the end of the summer I was like, "Hey, so do you want this book?" He's like, "No, that's your inventions in there. Even though you were taking notes on my projects, like this is your project. This is something I did with Carter. We were planning on building an audio amp project Kickstarter thing."
There's that honeycomb.
Yep. In 2014, March of 2014, the goal was to be able to build an stereo system that a stereo system has a signal processing path, and each section of that processing path would be modular and replaceable. So if you wanted Bluetooth in, now you put a Bluetooth in. If you want aux in, if you want whatever you want in, that's a module. The signal processing, if you want a tube-driven one that looks really cool, if you want a really high quality audio, if you want a cheap one. On the output, if you want to drive small speakers, if you want to drive giant speakers, if you want to have Bluetooth out, right? So it's all just a giant modular system.
Right.
Did not get very far, but it was fun while we
So
were
there's
working on it.
different breakpoints along a signal. You'll have to give me the base of that again.
Yeah, so you start with your cell phone, right? So, well, you got a device on your desktop, and it's got speakers, and you need to be able to get the audio into it. So maybe that's a guitar cord in, maybe that's headphone jack in, maybe that's RCA, the two RCA plug, red and white plugs in out of the back of your TV, right? Maybe that's Bluetooth in, maybe it's optical. There's all these different kinds of audio formats. Then you take that, and then you run it through like a signal processor, so you can do the balancing, the frequency balancing. Run through all the frequency filters. So you're like, oh, I want to do a low pass filter. This is a drum. I'm hooking this up to a drum, so I only want this drum section. Or maybe you just want straight pass through, which is simple. It's just a wire, right? That's super cheap. It's just a wire, but you have the ability to pull that wire out and put it in a new thing. And then the next stage would be the processing, and then the last stage would be the speaker drivers. Oh, look, Dungeons and Dragon maps.
Hell yeah. Dungeons and Dragon maps.
And then
This is some groovy stuff, dude.
it is.
Do we have a dance party? 15-second dance party? Yeah, let's do it. Here we go.
Hey, you got your tree up.
You do it.
I gotta show you something. This is fun. Did you see the sine cosine wave I sent you?
Nope. Just check Testa.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can. Can you hear Ben Brummer? Oh, right, of course. Ah, there it is.
We got a Christmas tree up.
Nice.
This mantelpiece.
What's in there? I want to lean forward like I'll be able to see it better, you know?
So now, if I can figure out how to do this on Android.
Droid.
Oh gosh. There we go. Come on. Okay, so I have that thing is hooked up to the Wi-Fi.
Ah, there we go.
See,
That's cool.
I'm turning that on and off with the cell phone that I'm filming from.
Yeah.
And then the next step is these, so I can turn those on. Because these are currently battery operated by this little battery pack thing. These are left over from our wedding, and it runs off batteries. And the batteries last like a month. But the batteries are dying, and Rachel's like, "I'm gonna buy new batteries." But oh yeah, you should see how much fun I've been having.
Let's see it.
Wake up.
I have a feeling since. Oh, there we go. She moved out. You moved in.
Yep.
This is interesting. We're getting a double view, one from your computer and one from your microphone. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
So what do you got going on there?
What'd you say?
What do you got going on there?
So that was where I was doing all the electrical work. I was going to show you the chip, but then I spilled these all over, and I'm being OCD and want to clean them up, which is slightly out of character for me. Oh, that's not one. But anyway, so yeah, so there's cute little chips. They're called.
What is in character?
I forget who makes them, but anyway.
So when occur, what is in character for you?
That's fair. No, I actually do like organizing things.
Okay. Yeah. See, I have this I love cleaning people's cars.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Talking about that.
Oh yeah, when you went down there, you cleaned out your car, and I was like so glad that you did without me really having to say anything. And I wouldn't have said anything generally. Like that's like my style normally is to not say anything. So it's yeah, I'm really OCD about certain things.
When I was young, I had a giant Lego collection. It's still somewhere, but I had this deep sea fishing tackle box, and so it was a tackle box, but then the two tops opened up, and then there were two trays that opened up with like 3 tiers of trays, and then there was the bottom section, but I think the bottom section had spots in it, and so I had all of my Legos. I first tried to at one point I sorted them by color, but that was stupid, and so I sorted all my Legos onto the table by type. I knew that I only had 25 delimitations of types. And so I sorted them all out. One of the things I had was the Torx, like the Technic stuff that were the axles and stuff. I just remember that I sorted all the axles by length. But anyway, so I sorted everything by type and laid them out, and then figured out what thing would go into what spot, because so that I wouldn't have overfull containers, but that things that were related would be near each other. It was fun.
Oh yeah. So when it comes down to it, have you ever sorted change like that or
yes.
other? Yeah.
You know what's really funny? I loved sorting change, but every time I sorted change, I would do a handful, and then I'd be like, this needs to be automated. This is an automated type thing. This is way too simple. And then I would try to build. Then I would want to build an automation machine.
Is that what happens every time these days?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had change to sort it, but yeah.
So you also love automating yourself out of a job?
Yes, 100%. I don't like doing the same thing twice.
Oh, hey, now we feeling better, right?
Oh yeah.
Now we're feeling more comfortable. Okay, so have you ever heard of the ontological argument?
No.
Okay, can you pause the Discord and then do exclamation play the ontological argument? Actually, no, let me bring up the actual video and bring a screen share up, and what I'll do is I'll do it that way.
Okay, pausing it that way does not work. There we go.
All right, here we go.
Can we share it?
Oh, I can. I can share many things. I can do anything.
Pick a book.
Pick up
Just look it up.
Reading Rainbow. All right, speaking of anything being possible, here we go.
In the year 1078, a monk named Anselm of Canterbury astonished the world by arguing that if it is even possible that God exists, then it follows logically that God does exist. Anselm's argument came to be called the Ontological Argument, and it has sharply divided philosophers ever since. The 19th century German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer called it a charming joke, but many prominent 20th century philosophers, such as Charles Hartshorne, Norman Malcolm, and Alvin Plantinga, think that it's sound. Here it is. God can be defined as a maximally great being. If something were greater than God, then that being would be God. And in order to be maximally great, a maximally great being would have to be all-powerful, all-knowing, and morally perfect in every possible world. Possible worlds are simply ways the world could have been.
I love
To say that something exists in a possible world is just to say that if the world were that, then the thing would have existed. For example, even though unicorn stones exist in the actual world, it seems at least possible that they could have. So we can say that unicorns exist in some possible world. On the other hand, a married bachelor does not exist in any possible world because the idea of a married bachelor is logically incoherent. It could not
See, I'm
possibly
laughing
exist.
about that. It just
So if it is
just
possible that a
makes us
maximally great
uncomfortable.
being exists, then we can say
like he'll
that he
talk about the
exists
smell
in
of
some
blue
possible
soon.
world.
Yeah.
Wait, a maximally great being would not really be maximally great if it existed in only some possible worlds.
Right?
To be maximally great, it has to be all-powerful, all-knowing, and morally perfect in every possible world. So think about it. If a maximally great being exists in any possible world, then it exists in every possible world. And if it exists in every possible world, then it exists in the actual world. That is, a maximally great being.
Isn't that some mental
actually
voodoo?
exists.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Atheist has to maintain not simply that God does not exist, but that it is impossible that God exists. Here's a summary of the ontological argument. Steps 2 through 6 are straightforward and largely uncontroversial. But what about point number 1? Clearly, if it can be shown that the idea of a God is logically incoherent, then the argument fails.
Right, yeah.
The idea of a maximally great being,
I think I've seen this
like a married
before,
bachelor,
but it's a long time ago.
circle, or the smell of blue,
Smell blue. Yeah.
doesn't
Square
seem to be
circle.
the case. The notion of an all-powerful, all-knowing, morally perfect being that exists in every possible world seems to be a perfectly coherent idea. But couldn't we parody this argument and make it work for anything? Why not say, it's logically possible that a maximally great pizza exists. Therefore, a maximally great pizza does exist? However, the idea of a maximally great pizza is not like the idea of a maximally great being. In the first place, there aren't intrinsic maximal values that make pizzas great. There could always be one more pepperoni to increase its greatness.
Right.
It's not even obvious what properties make a pizza great. Thin crust or thick crust, extra cheese, anchovies. It's relative to the taste of the consumer.
Yes.
The
This
second
is
place,
actually smart
a maximally great
sort of.
pizza would have to exist in every logical possible world.
It's not possible
But that
to
would
determine what
mean
the
that it
healthiest
couldn't be
company is.
eaten. So it wouldn't really be a pizza, because a pizza is something you can eat. The idea of a maximally great pizza turns out not to be a coherent idea. The idea of God, on the other hand, is an intuitively coherent idea. Therefore, his existence is a possibility. And the ontological argument shows that if God possibly exists, then God actually exists.
Wow, that really, for some reason, for me, gave a whole new definition to an intuitive interface.
Yeah.
Ideas, right? Because the idea of God is received by us on an intuitive interface versus a logical interface. That's very
Right.
interesting. How do you jump over logic? You give an intuitive kind of response. And so people want to know what we do, but they actually want to know why we do it. And, here's the interesting thing that I had a realization while we were watching that video is why you want to do this recording on an ideology, which you've said, not very interested in philosophy, but I don't believe you. Is it that you want to understand what's under the hood of what I'm doing? Is it that you want to understand the ideology, not religion, right? The two can be,
Yeah.
both of them can be part of a life, right? Or many, who knows? Who knows what the limitations are on that? Is that why? I'm going to have some peanuts.
No, I don't think so.
So
The question.
what are you after then if it's not understanding? It's a deep personal.
Yeah. So understanding, like, so the question is, why? Is it because of the understanding? Is it because of
Why not? The quietest one known to man.
does it sound like a bubble?
It was very bubbly. Yep.
Yeah, because there's tricks to it. Anyway, so
Your bubble.
yes. Okay, so yes, I do want to know, like, where you're coming from and what brings you there, and like the deeper meaning and the understanding. That's part of it, but that's not actually the goal. That's not the deepest goal. That's a secondary goal. That is a goal that I have because it will help me help you better. I think just helping you is the deepest goal. That's not actually it. It's not so much. For example, Carter was talking about he signed up for volunteer fire department, and I had been talking about a while ago when I was looking for jobs in this area before I moved here to find out what would be available before I moved. One of the jobs that I saw was a roadside emergency technician. So you're on call. It's not a full-time job, but you're on call. And then when a police officer sees somebody on the side of the road, they call dispatch. Dispatch calls their group of people, and you get sent out there with a jump box and a tire wrench, and you can fix things like dead batteries and spare tires, right? And if it's a wreck, if you can't fix it with basic hand tools, then they're going to call in a tow truck. Then you call in a tow truck, but you get paid for it and stuff. And so we have been talking about that. So he was talking about the fire department today, and I was talking about that thing. And so that would be helping someone without it's like the minimal amount of relational, because you just help this person and then you send them on their way and you never see them again, hopefully. Which is something that appeals to me, but is not actually the deepest form of appealing to me. That, like, a better version would be to help somebody
that helps you.
That maybe, but that's not.
Genuinely is interested in helping you.
I guess maybe that's fair, but also that helping someone that is a friend, like that is the like that can have an ongoing relationship with. So
Repeat it back. So what I feel as though you're saying is that for you, as we've talked about, it's helping others. It's not necessarily learning from this. It's not necessarily what you'll understand. It's the idea of service.
yeah.
And understanding what service can be in the world. Does that feel right? Or
Mm-hmm.
how would you state it?
So
I love
yeah,
it.
service. I think the car side roadside thing would be like pure service.
What if you're not getting paid? I know you'd still stop on the side of the road.
Yeah, exactly. It's still service.
I agree. Service to others is a really interesting thing. What I've often said is when I went out to find others like me, I found myself. It was an intuitive process. It wasn't one that was coherent, really, in a way. And I would oftentimes come to realizations that I couldn't describe. And those around me that gave me unconditional love and support and those kinds of things who were willing to hear me out, that's how I was able to progress. And then I feel as though for them, I need to make sure now that I'm up on the wall to make sure to pull them up, right? To
Mm.
the next stage is you want, it feels like, and I, what it feels like, just want unconditional love in our lives. Is that why we're doing what we're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think so.
I think we do service, it feels like, to learn more about ourselves and to find others. And we know by proving ourselves, we can help more people or help people more if they wish. However, it's always their decision. They have to do it.
I often help at parties. Like there'll be a party going on, and I will often be helping with the cleanup or helping with the something. Um, One of the reasons is because if you, as a single guy, go in the kitchen and start helping, it's pretty easy because like washing dishes is simple, and carrying stuff out in and out, like it's pretty simple to integrate yourself into the work chain as a non-skilled worker, right? Like you don't have to negotiate whether or not you're skilled enough to help in the kitchen. You just have to start washing dishes, whatever. But there's usually a bunch of ladies and gals working in the kitchen. Especially at church picnics, it's church really, like in that social group. So that's one, like that's a small reason. But another reason is because I always knew that when I was helping, that I was contributing, and like I knew where I was and where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing, and I knew that it was helpful. It's like when I'm out there talking in conversations and I find myself in the middle of like at the like not in a conversation, and I'm like, okay, I need to go find another conversation to jump into. I'm not really sure if I'm contributing or being helpful or if they just putting up with me. But when I'm helping, I know that I'm in the right place.
So let me try and restate back.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you feel by giving others value that you feel more secure?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second thing that you said earlier, just so I have it clear in my mind, was you feel as though you should help people and they should go away.
No.
I feel as though those were your words.
Yes. No, I was saying that is like that would still be good.
Mm-hmm.
I would still like that, but I think I like the deeper friendship better to an extent.
And what
I
does that
wouldn't
look
want.
like to you?
What'd you say?
And what does that look like to you? That deeper
Yeah.
relationship?
Yeah. So that looks to me like an inner circle of friends that is very tight knit and small, like like 4 or 5, not 30, 40. In the single digits order of magnitude. And then and then like a community around that. It's interesting. The rule of 150. I did some more research on it. It's actually it's like we're designed for a village. So yeah.
And we our technology hasn't, I think, adapted well to the large social contracts or cities that we build. And we're sort of seeing a pullback into that, but now we have the communications technology to facilitate. Right. So I think we're heading into another level of almost, let's use city states as a base concept. Now there's some pretty scary shit in there, right?
Yeah.
However, having more people around you, 4 or 5, like you mentioned, to help you sift through the sea of truth and ideas together, listen to each other, actively listen to each other, understand each other, and just unconditionally support each other. So my grandmother's dying words to me were, there is nothing too big to support your children through. And I believe that for anyone, right? For example, I would always treat a healthy business partner like I would treat my children.
Yeah.
Not as a child.
Right, I got you.
With the same
but like level. Family level. Yeah. So 2 things. One, when I was first working for Jake, it was lunchtime and I brought a lunch. And Jake came out to me at like 11:50 and was like, "Hey, I'm going to take a lunch. I'm going to go eat lunch with my family." And he's like, "Look, it was up to me. I would have you come in and you would eat with the family. But my wife is my business partner and she's a little more cautious. And let's just let's just wait a couple of days." And by the end of the summer, I was out there working at like 7:00 at night on Friday, and he's like, "Hey, what kind of pizza do you like? Like, my family's ordering pizza. I'm gonna order you some pizza. Let's have a pizza night. Like and like it, and many good things." So
that is such a profound thing to say. Jake's a wise man. We should talk to him ASAP. And the reason is in the last few days, I've really realized that my wife's cautiousness is a real nice balance to my impulsiveness.
Yeah, it's good. So here's what I think we are designed for. I think it's the design considerations that we are built for, but the specific parameters change. So we have a small group of people that would be like traditionally would be your family, right? A group of family. This are the people that you share everything with, that you work through the deep emotional things with. These are the people, like it's through thick and thin. There's very little, you share basically everything with them, right? But if you tried to share everything with the entire community, that would suck. So there's this group, which is your family that you share everything with. And then there's the community at large, and these are the people that you know, like they're acquaintances, but they are like known sources of information. Oh man, we watched this really cool thing about Google. Oh, it's about Google and search, and it's about information. Like, can you trust this information? So you have all these people that are around you in your community that you hear information from. They're the people that bring up the ideas that you don't agree with. But you know them and you pass them in the grocery store, and you know that, like, if they are actually an asshole, you know that they're actually an asshole. If they're not actually an asshole, you know they're not actually an asshole. And when they say this, when they come out with this worldview that seems really asshole-ish, you're like, you know that that there's another side to this that's fairly legitimate, because they can believe it and not be an asshole.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So it reminds me of Blackbeard the pirate, right? When you already know someone's a crook, right? You know they're a crook, right?
Right.
And we've talked about the Star Trek Picard episode of, like the woman that comes out on witch trial, and by the end of it, not just one Romulan spy, but Picard and everybody is on trial really at that point. And she says, "You used my father against me." I forget what the name of the episode was, but she just like freaked out that he dished her own father's words back to her that she had become the hypocrite of, right? She had become the evil that he protected against, and she just lost her shit, right? Just like, And the woman did such a great job with the role. Like you could feel her rage and her hate. And yeah, she just did an absolutely fantastic job at pointing out something of, I think, what horror movies really talk about. So, the Nightmare on Elm Street, right? We've talked about this a little bit. The idea of Freddy Krueger and the town catching up to him and getting out on a technicality after doing some really bad stuff in a town, and then they burned him alive, right? And so the entire Nightmare on Elm Street, story I heard in a TED talk and looked into it more, is really, you can see it talks about the idea of mob justice or burning people alive or hanging people, things that we just don't really talk about very often. So what horror allows us to do is, and I'm not actually a big fan of horror. I wonder why. I think it was because I was a coward and afraid of certain things in my life before I came to certain things, and we'll talk about that at another time. But moving from Blackbeard to trusting who the woman is and her not knowing it on the inside, being able to trust someone's greed or whatnot, is led us really astray. And I mean that in a deep sense, that if you are building your trust on such relational concepts that have such a low health and half-life of a relationship, Ben, what do you think is going to happen? And I want you to sift on that for a second, in the sense of, I'll remember relational concepts. I have to ask you a question first. So what you said, I would love to, not in any challenging manner, but just understand better why you feel as though you wouldn't want to share everything with your community.
There is a movie that I have never seen, but my parents have told me about, because it was they saw it when they were kids.
Sure.
There's a guy, and there's this Buddha, there's a street performer or something, and he flicks a coin to this guy, and it lands on its edge. Flicks him a quarter, and the quarter lands on its edge. And all of a sudden, the guy realizes that he can read other people's thoughts, but maybe they can read his, or he meets a woman that can read his thoughts or something like that. Anyway, but the problem is, he can read her thoughts, but the problem is she can read his thoughts. And these two people,
infinite, wouldn't that be a feedback loop?
Yes.
Chamber.
Yes.
Essentially?
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting. That's infinity right there, brother.
Oh yeah. Well,
wow.
I mean, yeah. Can you focus? The question is, can you focus on two things at once? Right? Like what you're thinking about and what they're thinking about.
Well, I think you can hold two things, like Lady Liberty, with two hands.
Right.
I think you can, for example, righteousness always holds two things, right, in its hands. So whatever that definition comes from or is headed towards, or however its journey or destination, or however you view it, it seems like is a balance that you have to almost evaluate one at a time.
Yes. So I don't think so. Going back a level on the stack, I don't think sharing your thoughts is a good idea, because our thoughts are pretty unrefined.
Well, and that's a really interesting thing. So I have another question then, to just grow with you and you here, is what does failure do for someone? Let's say, for example, when you said unrefined to me, I heard people shouldn't be very confident until they come to a state of, to be honest, whatever the hell refined means. Is that a fair? Well, fair is not really the word. That is what I felt. But do you feel?
Yeah. No, I get it.
Of what you were saying under the words.
Yeah. So what I am getting at from So I don't think. Independent of the way that our figuring out how our thoughts work is a whole can of worms.
Well, let's have to figure it out. Is sort of what I'll make as a proposal here. Let me ask in a question then. So what if you could accept the fact that, we'll say, okay, let's say everything in a pool you can't see is everything in your brain is in a pool, right? Imagine
Right.
a pool, and we put everything you know, everything you've experienced, knowledge, experience, and the correlations of wisdom then come into play. So all the knowledge and experience is in a pool. Now, would you putting the two together and saying, "Oh, this," and then I saw when we were recording earlier, I could play back the recording, your head snapped to one side, and then you had a realization, right? And so what you were doing was you were bridging from one side of an argument to another, and you were breeding something new. That thing right there, I feel, is what the brain is in the conscious section. That processing line, or the center core of a multidimensional matrix of strings, right, going out to all of those things. So it almost could be seen as like the glowing ball in the pool that the observer looks at. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
And
the
that's
that has all the connections to all the other things.
and that's kind of what I'm getting at. That okay, here's a fun thought. I think every personality archetype, I think every personality archetype is present in every other person. Okay, so every is a huge statement.
That's
but
wild. Tell me more.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
let's just let's talk about, Uncle Kevin, the or Uncle Dave, the asshole, right? Everybody's Alice in Wonderland, the Tweedledee and Tweedledum say this great line: "Every family's got a no good, lazy brother, except our family. We've got two." They say in unison. So right, so you got, picture. So there's this asshole, right? Like, there are assholes in the world. I don't think I think that the assholeness that he's embraced is actually in all of us, but the ones of us that aren't assholes, know not to indulge that side of our brain.
Let me parallel with you. So remember, we started on you wanting people to go away. All right.
Right.
So I would like to parallel with you and ask, is it that there are some people out there who have received less unconditional love and maybe more shame? And that's
Right.
a good correlation, as well as their choices, which I am not a fan of the idea of luck. I'm a fan of the idea of choice.
Yes. And
Just saying, as a fan, not as a sticking point for me. Dualistically, I always hold both in consideration. I feel as though some people have been given a deck of cards and some people have chosen to play different hands with the same cards. Actually, it's interesting. We all really have access to the same deck. It's like a deck builder. Ooh.
yeah, except, that's very interesting. So I think in the deck building game.
Holy shit, it's acceptance, brother.
Ooh.
If you accept the cards, you can go get them.
Ooh.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, it's the draw. It's the place 5, draw 5.
Wow.
Okay, so that answers my question. My thing is, I look at the world and I see that different people get given different decks, and it looks like a random shuffle. The point, people get given better decks of cards because their parents have, oil wells. There or.
Oh, I gotta hop in, brother. I gotta hop in.
Go for it.
To be honest, those rich families are more fucked up.
Exactly.
And I pity them in the sense of, like, I'm sorry that you have to live that life, because you, at a moment's notice, your parents have every power to ship you off, which is exactly what happened to me. Right.
But I don't know, I may be wrong in this, but I don't think I said anything about them being better, and you assumed that I was going to say that the oil kids are going to have a better deck of cards.
We use the words in the sense of, correct me if I'm wrong, make sure I'm
go for it.
correctly, is You said that some people are given a better deck of
I
cards.
did say better. Okay.
Parents own an oil rig or
Okay, I did say better. I wasn't sure. Yes, I was thinking that, but okay. But the point is, I think that people are given a different decks of cards.
I think people are given more access to opportunity.
Right. So, so, like you're given different decks of cards, but it's not all luck because, as you were saying, the ability to there's the opportunity to have more. There's the opportunity to have more. So if you take your halfway decent deck of cards that you've inherited, and then you spend it horribly, and you use that horribly, you run out of cards in the same way that somebody that's handed a horrible deck of cards and plays them well would also kind of end up in the same place. However, there is still the ability to swap out cards. Like you're not just stuck with the deck that you're given. In India, there's a caste system, and there is a whole caste of people that are the garbage collectors, and they believe in, part of the thing is their religion, they believe in regeneration. So like, well, if you just do a really good job collecting garbage, when you die you'll be born into a higher class, and if you do a terrible job collecting garbage, you'll be reborn as a rat. You'll go down a level below garbage collectors. And so in that case, it's really hard to grow out of that lower class. It's not good. And where we are now, while we still have more classes than I think there's more class. You're getting into politics now. I think there's more class than we let on, and that there should be. But I think there's also less class. There's more class from a like a moral standpoint,
So then let me ask you a
but
question.
less
If
from
someone
what
said
people
to
think.
you, I want to be free, what does that say to you?
Oh, well, that means that they think that they're trapped.
Okay. And so can someone shed the class system at any moment in time?
Yeah, just watched a video about a guy who. Okay, there is a thing called selection bias, where when you hear a story from somebody, I was at a talk where a guy said, "I quit college and started a business, so you should too." And part of the thing was, right at the moment where he almost hit rock bottom, he was handed a safety net from his parents of like $20,000. Um, and
That's really interesting. How do you feel about the fact that I'm pulling my last 40 out of a fund that came from me being raped as a little boy that was supposed to go to healing the world or healing me, right? It seems like an actually a good alignment of money. And I'm glad we're discussing it now because, for anybody in the future, because this will be posted, really when it comes down to it, I have very little taste for money in my life. However, I see it as the ability to do more for a community of incredible people like Mr. Ben here, people who show me unconditional support. And so I wonder in my life if hitting rock bottom is necessary. And what it did for me is I forgot about that for most of my life. I lived a life of pretty comfortable, pretty comfortable life. And that money was what provided that. It allowed me a safe space to learn about myself and to not really work, right? And to, go through that space. And then to pair with that, I was sent to one of the best military academies in the world, St. John's Military Academy out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it is very obvious to me what I was trained in, and the politics, the etiquette, the discipline, the warfare studies, the other things like that, the way people work in, deep studies into primal natures of 500 boys, stuck in a school together. And, I was your 14-year-old sociologist taking notes and going back to my room, and so you can guess how my experience went there. Right. And so I got through that. And in the face of adversity, I find that people can become shining stars of inspiration. And when it really
really comes down to it, I want to let people shine, right? For me, the idea of capital, if a community can come to a consensus of proper allocation, in that moment, they're basically saying, hey, this is how we want to pursue truth. And so this feels like an experiment between two great men who I consider to be, sitting in this room. I really want to say to the world here and to you, Ben, that, when it's, when it really comes down to it, there is no better way I've found to increase someone's ability to invest in a way that is proper. I really haven't, when I think about that, found a specific way. And then when I think about delivery of content, I haven't found a specific way. And when I think about delivery of solutions or products or people or anything like that, as a note on the people thing, them delivering themselves, that's a different one. But I think very appropriate to mention here is it's all up to them, and anyone can transcend basically anything. I think Martin Luther King said once that there was a woman who came out of the sticks to become one of the greatest contraltos the world had ever seen. And a man said once that my ceiling is too low for this voice. I'm getting the goosebumps, man. I'm just like, I am so inspired by what a little bit of true unconditional support or believing in someone, unconditional belief, and like, I believe in you, even if they're failing you, that's still not out of bounds. Failure is not out of bounds, right? In fact, I hear a lot of people in society talking about boundaries, right? The idea of boundaries. However, what's really out of bounds, right? What's out of bounds? What's inalienable for someone? Air, food, joy, confidence, support, love, right? As a child, right? Those kinds of things should be given to anyone. And after that, you're pretty good, right? You've got a full deck of cards. Everybody is filthy rich from birth. I forget who said that, but whoever did, credit to you, right? And I'll try and find that quote. At the end of the day, I can't find a better way for anyone else. But what I can do is go on tirades like this, where I whip together a bunch of things into maybe an idea of wisdom of how we can support others and say, hey, here's our base deck of cards, and you can go into life and you can get whatever cards you want to build your deck. There is no one restricting you. There's no one holding us back. And the interesting thing is I lived a life as a coward, right? Because I was raised by cowards. I was loved by someone who took advantage of me, and then I went out into life and then let people take advantage of me and saw that as my way to fulfill my path forward, or to feel appreciated, or to maybe find an idea of love. However, the moment that we relate to somebody on something like greed because we know they're a pirate, we know those kinds of things, then there's really no way to get to that point, right? Because what you're doing is you're putting up boundaries in the want space, right? Where your actual need space is actually, you need to, for a trust, trust has to start, and then respect sort of like whittles it down to like really getting to know somebody. You shared with me some financial difficulties that you're going through because of what we're working on. And we're both basically hitting rock bottom because we've served people and continued to learn and grow our lives. In fact, this has been the best investment I've ever made in my marriage, right? I mean that I've grown as a man in ways that I would have never been able to guess. And so coming back even further, the never being able to guess for me feels like you can't know what that corner is. That's a really interesting thing. Like, there is no way to really know what is going to be around the next bend, and like be able to like really, I don't know, like find a way where we can really predict that. It seems really logical, but at the end of the day, it's not intuitive. It's not intuitive by any measure whatsoever. And now we're back to the beginning of the conversation with ontology, sort of hopping backwards through the conversation because we're winding down this, and we got to post this recording like, so what we're going to do is for anyone listening, we're going to be posting these as we are finishing a production of many years of working with people and how to best empower them, how to serve others, and at the same time provide the security that we talked about in that service for yourself while doing it. And what I find is that's focusing on the boundaries of true needs, the idea of core values and a connection to something possibly, as we'll discuss maybe in the next round, bigger than oneself. Or are people bigger than ideas? Is a bowler just part of bowling, or is bowling bigger than the bowler, right? That those kinds of things are really interesting. So thank you again, Ben. Like, this is just fantastic. And we're going to keep charging through this, and we'll transcribe a lot of this and put it into the book. So if anybody has comments or anything like that and you want to add to this discussion or possibly even join us, we're going to come out with a community project here. So I just find this just fantastic that people can come together and produce stuff. And I genuinely thank you, man. Like, this is why I feel we do it, is to share with others. Have we come to it? Is that it?
I think we got it.
I think we got it, dude. That's crazy. Wow. Da-na-na! Right? All right, dude. Let's cut the recording there. That's great. All right.
Perfect.
All right. See ya.
All right. See ya.